Do you like jerky? I like jerky, but now that beef jerky is off the table, I have made a jerky recipe using seitan. How many times can I say jerky in 30 seconds? All right, so Derica, we have a recipe.
We do. We're gonna start off with the main ingredient, which is vital wheat gluten. We need a half cup, please.
If you have a gluten sensitivity, this is not the recipe for you. I will work on another type of jerky at some point, but for today, this is seitan. It's made of gluten. There are no alternatives in this case.
Next ingredient is 1 teaspoon of liquid smoke. Next, we have 1 teaspoon of paprika. Today, we are using our extra fancy paprika. Why? Why not?
We had.
Next, we're going to use a half teaspoon of red pepper flake. Now, these are actually
ground. No, those are actual red pepper flake. We bought that from the store. Yeah,
okay.
That particular one. You're thinking of the other thing.
I was thinking about the other thing. Now we're going to do a full teaspoon of garlic powder.
Make sure you get it all. It tends to stick. You know, it's humid.
It's humid. We're in Florida. It's a thing. And then half a teaspoon of onion powder. Normally, in our other recipes, you'll notice we have equal amounts of onion powder and garlic powder, but in jerky, we felt like the garlic really should be more forefront.
I just really wanted to change it up so you didn't think I did the same thing all the time. What's next?
Next, half a teaspoon of freshly ground black pepper.
Or black pepper to taste. Now, these seasonings are all to taste, basically. I mean, you can play around with the seasonings in a jerky just like anything else. This is a good starting point. It makes a nice peppery, spicy, smoky jerky, okay? So it's a pretty basic recipe, really.
Yeah.
Next.
Next is 1/4 cup soy sauce.
Okay, I'm gonna give this a little mixy mix first because I did put some liquid in here.
Do you want to go ahead and add this last dry ingredient?
Yes.
Okay, so this is 1 teaspoon of steak seasoning. So
this happens to be the McCormick Montreal steak seasoning.
Yeah, it's just a commercial blend.
Bunch of pepper and garlic and salt, really, but it works really, really well. I use it in seitan frequently now. Saves me from having to get out 15 different things. Derica gets so mad when I buy these blends because she's like, we have all that stuff. You can make that yourself. And it's so much easier to just pull out 1 jar and go than to pull out 15 jars and try to figure out the components of each one. Next.
So our wet ingredients is 1/4 cup of soy sauce.
Now this happens to be a low sodium soy sauce, so it's not as potent. If you are using a regular soy sauce or a tamari, you may not need quite as much and you may just use more water instead because it could end up being too salty.
And 2 tablespoons of maple syrup.
Use a good quality maple syrup. This happens to be the one that we got from a client who sent it to us. I believe it's
Vermont.
Vermont, yeah. All the Canadians out there are hating me right now. I'm sorry, but that's where it came from.
And at this point, we're going to mix that thoroughly because we may or may not need our final ingredient.
Yeah, sometimes I do need the final ingredient's water. You may need it, you may not. This looks like it might come together. Essentially, what starts to happen is the vital wheat gluten will start to strand. It'll start to form its gluten, you know, it'll start to build it up. And if it doesn't seem to be doing that, if it just looks like kind of like mashed potatoes that'll fall apart really easily, then it's too wet and you want to add more vital wheat gluten. But if it's too dry and won't come together, like this is coming together in a nice mass, I don't think I even need the water this time. Different wheat glutens work differently. I'm finding the one that we just got, the last bag, is actually a little bit more, it absorbs less water, so it tends to stay wet and doesn't work nearly as well. It could just be different batches, I don't know. At this point though,
I am going to include the water in the ingredients list in the description below, but I'm going to put next to it that it's optional based on what your personal experience is and if you require it or not.
Right. Different days might need different things. Like this is starting to come together. See, it's pulling apart a little too easily, but I do want to knead it a bit. This dough is not intended to be super glutinous, okay? Because you want it to break apart as it's drying when you're chewing it. Otherwise, it just gets uber chewy and it's almost too hard to eat. So you don't want it to be too chewy. But I am gonna need this for just a couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes to build up some of that gluten. Already, the smell is amazing. Now, initially when I was working on this recipe, we tried a couple different things. We actually tried mushroom. We tried, mushroom didn't really work too well for us. Gonna have to work on that. There's gotta be a better way. Tofu, I think we tried. We weren't 100% thrilled with that one either.
Yeah.
The seitan, honestly, worked so well. It was really incredible.
It was interesting because when Brian was researching different recipes and how people have used seitan in a jerky format, most people just make a base
Marinade.
seitan and then they marinate it. And Brian thought, well, why don't you just put the seasonings right into the seitan?
Into the seitan. There's no reason to need a marinade. So what I do now, once I get it kind of done. Now, by the way, this is like a very small amount, all right? You can make a lot more than this. I tend to make this in small amounts because A, I'll eat the whole thing in one sitting, and B, it's not really, I don't know how shelf stable this is, so I don't like to have a huge quantity of it laying around. I'm making it into a little brick though.
Yeah, traditional jerky is treated with salts and dried to a point that it's shelf stable. We aren't really utilizing those techniques in this. We're simulating a jerky-like product.
Exactly. So this isn't true jerky and it's not going to be fully shelf stable like we said. So we just wanted to say that 3 times to get the point across to you that it's probably not shelf stable. That makes 4. I'm making it more of a square because that way when I go to slice it, it's much more consistent, okay? I know you can make it look all natural and stuff, but when you go to cut it, that's a whole lot harder to deal with. So I like to make it more of a square and then I get consistent cuts. I do make it about 1 inch thick though. Let me go grab some plastic wrap and wash my hands. I'll be right back. The next step is pretty basic. You want to just wrap this up in plastic wrap, and you don't have to do it like uber tight. You just want to make sure that it's totally covered. You don't have to get all fancy with it or anything. And I like plastic wrap for this because that way I can see what it's doing inside there. And you can also feel through it pretty well because the next step is put this in the freezer. Now, how long? Don't do it overnight. It'll freeze solid. Not good. We want to firm this up because this is still raw. This is uncooked. So we want to firm this up just enough that we can cut it consistently and evenly, but we don't want it to be frozen because then it's hard to cut. Usually for us, it's anywhere from 3 to 5 hours. Your mileage may vary, so start checking it after about 2 hours, and we'll be back once this is a little bit more frozen. Okay, we have one that is frozen. Now, I actually made 2 batches of this, one much earlier today and one just now, so that way we can just continue on instead of having to wait 3 to 5 hours to make this video, because that would just be crazy. So I have this one. It is the exact same recipe though, okay? There's no difference. And I'm just gonna get it out. It's a little bit firmer, as you can tell. We don't need this. What I wanna do now is just slice this into like 1/8 of an inch thick pieces, okay? That's a little on the thick side, but it's okay because that's the end. I wasn't as consistent with my shaping of this one. Yep, just like that. And you want to be really careful because it's pretty fragile, as you can tell. So I'm just going to continue cutting this up. And as I get those pieces cut, we're going to start laying them onto a cookie sheet that has one of these wire racks on it. We used to have a dehydrator, and it sucked. I hated it. Because where we wanted to keep it, it would constantly overheat and it didn't work right. And it had to be put away every time and pulled out every time. And it had to sit on the table, so it took up space. And it turned out to be such a nuisance. So instead, I use the oven. I'll get to that in just a moment. Let me cut this all up.
Non più tra I farfalloni amoroso, notte giorno di torno girano, delle belle turbando al riposo.
All right, so we have our jerky. It's ready to go. Actually, what's really funny is you can eat this now. It's not going to be all that great texture-wise, I will be honest. I did try the little tiny pieces. The flavor's there, but the texture's not all there yet. So what we want to do to improve the texture is take some of the hydration out. I know we just added all that hydration to it, so it's kind of ironic. But what you do is get an oven set to 250 degrees Fahrenheit. Ours is already going. Put this in there. Now, at about 2 hours, start looking at it. This is a cook to your desired chewiness level kind of thing. The thinner you made it, the less time it's going to take to cook, the more likely it's going to turn into jerky brittle rather than jerky chewy. The thicker you make it, the longer it'll take to cook, the less likely you'll actually get a really nice texture. So there's like this sweet spot. That's why I say about 1/8 of an inch, just a nice thin slice. Okay, it's kind of an important thing, but that's why I can't really tell you exactly how long, because your oven's gonna be different, your jerky's gonna be different, you cut it different, everything's different. Anyway, 2 hours in the oven. See you then. Okay, ours took just under 2 hours. It was like an hour and 45 minutes. And I'm afraid I may have gone slightly too far, like 10 minutes. I was checking like every 15 minutes for the last, what, half hour or so?
Yeah.
They feel a little bit more crispy than I really want, which isn't a huge issue.
And you flip these midway through, or?
No, I flipped them at the end. I don't really flip them midway through at all. No, see, there's only lines on one side.
Okay.
But I'm gonna try one. They're a little crunchy, but not bad. It's jerky texture, okay? It's chewy, a little bit of a crunch.
It's kind of like the outside is crunchy, and then the inside has that chewy, terry kind of.
I was afraid it wasn't gonna, like I was afraid I was gonna snap my teeth trying to chew it.
Oh. I really love how the spiciness sits on your tongue, but then the maple syrup comes in and brings this lovely sweetness to it. So it has a really nice balance, but it's not boring at all. There's plenty of flavor in here.
Yeah, there's a little bit of heat, a little bit of sweet. The savoriness comes through. It's very meaty seeming. So for people that really like jerky, this is the way to go. Some things we want to talk about though are storage. Do not, and I repeat, do not under any conditions put this into the refrigerator. The first batch that I made, I put them in the glass Pyrex here, put them in the fridge. The next day, it was, they would have chipped your teeth. They just became crispy and hard. I ended up taking those and putting them into a bamboo steamer for about 20 minutes. And they softened up nicely, put them into the glass container, and it worked. So if you go a little too far, you can steam these and they will actually kind of come back. What I'm gonna do with these though, is I'm gonna put them right into this glass container, because some of these, like the thicker ones, are still a little bit moist. And I'm thinking they may have just enough moisture to help the others soften up just slightly. Now you notice I made just a pretty decent handful. And realistically, we have two because, you know, I had the second one that I made too. It is drying out right now. But I don't like to make too much at a time. I'll usually have a piece or two almost every day. It's really low in fat, okay? There's very little fat in this at all. Very high in protein and not really a lot of other bad stuff. Probably fairly high in sodium, so you don't want to like eat the whole thing. But other than that, it's actually pretty healthy stuff, really, which is kind of weird thinking of jerky, right?
Now, because these aren't 100% dehydrated, they do have a limited shelf life. I know, I've said the word again. But we want to stress this because we don't want you to think that this is a preserved product, because it's not.
Ours lasted for almost 2 weeks. We got 2 weeks in a sealed plastic or glass container like this on the counter. So,
and that's because they were on the
safe.
counter and we ate them. Because they were on the counter, so we ate them on the counter.
Well, we ate them all over the place, but they were on the counter. Anyway, came out really, really good. If you have suggestions for other flavor combos to put into jerky, let me know in the comments below, because I'm actually really curious. I may work on another recipe. I actually tested something with the second batch to see if that works better, and I don't know yet because they're still dehydrating, so I'll let you know on that too. But that's another video. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.
Bye-bye.